So today I'm back talking more about Overwatch, as always, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about team comps and why it seems like in a lot of games, I'm going to say probably the majority of your games, you don't really get that great of team comps. And I think for a lot of players, you do know that the majority of players probably know the meta. The majority of players probably know what they should be playing, and you're probably assuming that a lot of people do kind of know what they're supposed to be playing, honestly. But today I'm going to talk to you guys why, even though the majority of people do know what to play, they aren't actually picking those roles, and especially they aren't exactly picking those characters. And mainly I'm going to be going over why you just can't happen to get any good team comps in your games of Overwatch competitive, and I guess as well why it isn't the worst thing in the world. Now let's start off right here. One thing I want to say, when you're going into Overwatch competitive and looking for a good team comp, obviously you're going to run into a lot of one-tricks, and a lot of people who are just angry and don't want to switch, and a lot of people that just want to play their one certain character and get better at them, solo queue, main them, one-trick them, anything you want to call it. And overall, there's going to always be a large sense of general selfishness in the game. But you kind of have to remember that this is not something that's just particularly in Overwatch. This applies to every single game, and it's not really something that I feel like you can fix, because that's just kind of how people work. They worry a lot more about themselves than random strangers that they just met. So I'm going to say that's probably the first reason why you just can't get good team comps, because people do care more for themselves. And I guess I'm going to say something right here as well. If you are a DPS player or a DPS one-trick in particular, you can't really expect much yourself. I mean, you're making it kind of hard on everyone else to build a team comp around you, but when you get into a game, there's a high probability that you won't get 4 other players that don't play DPS, or that I guess you're just gonna get 1 other DPS player. It kind of makes sense statistically why that won't happen, and I don't think you can complain too much if that does happen to you. I'd honestly recommend learning some other roles, learning some other things to do. Locking in your main character, of course, always first, and then switching out after. But overall, yeah, I think if you're just one-tricking DPS, there's not too much to complain about, because that's kind of just how the game works. That's how the player base works. There's always going to be more DPS players, and you can't really expect it to magically be any different. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is the fact that it seems like when you get into a lot of your games, a lot of people just don't want to go to certain heroes, and it's kind of annoying. Let's say that you're playing Winston yourself, and you really want to have a diva on your team, or something that can help you dive. But you get like a Junkrat, you get a Zarya, or maybe even get a Reinhardt, you get other people that slow push. That kind of sucks, and you kind of wish that you'd have a better team comp, honestly. But one thing you kind of want to remember is that sometimes it's better for your team to go a bad team comp with heroes that they know, rather than people filling with heroes that they suck at. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, because I mean, even when you look at the top ranks, sometimes you can see 4 DPS comps winning a match because they were all amazing at those heroes. But if they filled that match, maybe they would have had a much better team comp, but they might have still lost. I think that's something that's kind of important to realize, that yeah, your team comp might be worse, but you shouldn't ask people to go heroes or roles that they don't know how to play at all, because it probably won't work out for you. And I know that kind of sucks. I wish that, you know, people could just play every role in the game, but a lot of people can't. A lot of people can't play every hero. And especially if you're a player, let's say you only play Zarya and you really want a Reinhardt, but the person doesn't play Reinhardt, just kind of accept that, play that game, and try to play around the different tanks you're going to be getting, because you can't really expect your teammates to always go the characters that you want to go. Again, I wish you could expect that. That's just, again, kind of not how the game works. And I guess something else that's kind of not how the game works is the game building good team comps in general. I mean, the game literally just shoves random players at the same skill level together, and that's kind of it. And when you think about it like that, the chance that everybody on your team is either going to fill to create a good team comp, or main heroes that are in the same team comp that work together, both of those chances are extremely low. The chance that you're going to get an Orisa player with a Roadhog player in the same game, what's the chance of that? Not that amazing. Or just having, you know, 2 or 3 fill players, that's not super high as well. So I think you kind of have to keep that in mind, that yeah, it would be nice if you could happen to get these team comps, but in a lot of cases it probably won't happen. And I mean, even if there was a role queue system, you'd only be queuing for a role, you wouldn't be queuing for team comps, so you still wouldn't be always getting these great team comps that you've been wanting to. And yeah, it's just kind of hard. Overall, what I'm going to say you can kind of do against this or to counteract this is to either play a hero that can fill in many different ways, or I guess to just learn how to adapt your playstyle for different people on your team. I mean, maybe you're a Winston main, you're used to diving, but your teammates don't really dive way too much. You could try to play a slower paced Winston that waits until there's a really big opening where you then can dive by yourself, maybe get a kill, maybe take some pressure away from the majority of your team. You kind of have to think about that in your games because, yeah, the chance that you're going to just get a good team comp in the first place, it's not that great, so you kind of have to overcome that with your own gameplay or with your own knowledge right there. Now, let's switch gears completely, and one thing I wanted to talk about in this video was the fact that a good team comp doesn't mean the same thing in different ranks, and that's something that's kind of hard to think about, that team comps and their effectiveness change depending on your rank, and often a good team comp in a higher rank will maybe not be as effective as in a lower rank, or vice versa. For example, I see a lot of triple DPS in high rank, because there are a lot of DPS players that are extremely good at their characters, and that can kind of make up for the fact that no one's creating space, no tanks are doing that. I mean, they're creating their own space with all their damage dealt, with all their kills, all of that. But when you go to lower ranks, that doesn't really work. I mean, the DPS aren't really quite good enough for that, and the tanks start to shine quite a bit more, and in that rank, I've been seeing a lot more triple tank, quadra tank, because those are generally slightly easier to play, they can stay alive for a lot longer, they have really easy to hit ultimates that do a lot, and there you go. Just that example, I think you can kind of understand why team comps do kind of change their importance based off of ranked. Even certain meta comps, I think, can kind of change. If you look at it one way, I think spam comp is almost always good in low rank. You know, you could even go with Bastion, I guess, if you want to, but really just Orisa, Roadhog, Junkrat, I think that's always going to be good. But when you look at high rank, well, Winston can pretty much always do good. D.Va can pretty much always do good. Genji and Tracer and Doomfist can always do fine. So yeah, it really does depend on the rank, and I guess when you're going up ranks or going down ranks, don't kind of think of a team comp as the same thing, because it honestly does change, which is kind of annoying to get used to, but that's just kind of how it works. And I guess another thing I should say about that is that if you do get a team comp that you think is just not going to work, it doesn't mean that you've automatically lost that game. I think a lot of people kind of underestimate their team and underestimate their team comp. Sure, your team comp is not meta, or sure, your team comp isn't something that is really desirable, but sometimes you can make stuff that's not the best work. I mean, I don't think that Zarya Winston is the absolute best thing in the world. I'd probably play with another dive tank or something, but you can make it work, and you can play with those shields, and you can do some stuff to try to just make it work for your teammates. And oftentimes what you're going to kind of have to do is look for synergies in your team that you normally wouldn't really have to look for. A lot of the times what you're trying to look for in a game is just diving in, spamming, doing stuff like that. But what if you have a really weird team comp? What if you have a Symmetra and an Ana and a Winston, and then you also have someone like an Orisa? All these characters that don't really fit in way too much together. You have to kind of figure out how are you going to be playing, or if you kind of have to split off your team comp a little bit and see, hey, these guys will go over here, these other guys will go over here, we'll converge on the enemy, try to use all of our strengths the best we can. It kind of does depend based off your team comp, but realize that just because your team comp maybe isn't the best, that there still might be some synergies that can help you and that you should be looking for in your game. So I guess there you guys go with that. And the final thing I wanted to talk about is that if you are never getting good team comps, which does happen a lot of the time, I've played so many games where the team comps are just awful over and over and over again. But if that does happen to you, as always, I'm going to say, just duo queue or trio queue. And while this won't always give you a great team comp, what it can do is set up a great core. And here are some good examples. If you go Brigitte plus Rhine, well, that's a nice brawler core, and you can play with whoever else you want, but you're gonna have that nice brawling core that can go in through the middle. People can help you, people can ignore you, whatever, you have that. Or if you play Lucio Genji, you have a nice diving core. Maybe you won't have the best dive on your team, but you can still try to engage, try to get some dives, and go on with that. If you play with Junkarissa, you have a nice spam core, and sure, you might have a Tracer or a Widowmaker, or you might have, Zarya or something that doesn't fit the best, but you still have a nice core that can hopefully do quite a bit of damage to the enemies. I know that a lot of times you'd want to have more people in your core and more people working through the team comp, but if you at least have a duo queue or a trio queue creating a great core, well, oftentimes that's good enough to win that game. People can follow up with your main strategy, they can kind of go with their own, and if you see someone on your team that doesn't really fit in your core, maybe you could call them out and say, hey, maybe you can flank a little bit more, we can focus on the spam, you get the flanks, try to get picks, and if you get a pick, we'll go in. You can do a lot of stuff like that, and honestly, you know, it's hard to get good team comps, and a lot of the times you just won't, but there are some things you can do against that, and I think especially duo queuing is the #1 most important thing if you really are getting bad team comps. But anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. This has just been my own personal opinion, so if you have your own opinion, leave that down in the comment section down below. Tell me how you guys get good team comps, or on the other hand, what is the worst team comp you've gotten in the last week? Say that, and then after that, write yellow cab, because I got that on my desk, so there you guys go with that. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a wonderful day.